All right, let's take a look at 2.2. Our second activity this week we need to work with. And in this case, we're going to work with not only our functions, but some formatting and some other pieces here when we return values in. So I think it's really important we know how to take data into a function and also how to get data out of a function. So this is exercise 2.2, and it's U1, M2, A2, and your initials. All right, so what I'd like to start with is this idea of functions. So they go through here. We're defining a function, um, and then we're printing the smallest of those numbers that are turned in there, and then we're returning that value. All right. So one of the things one of the things that you want to do, or I like to do, is even if so in Python it's somewhat optional, although I think it's going to become mandatory as we look at things. When I define a function, so I can take data in or I can not take data in. So in this case, it's called a null or a void function because I'm not taking any data in. But I'm going to do something, and then at the end we have a return. And honestly, I like to put the return in even if it is a void return that there's nothing going on. It just to me it kind of closes that loop and lets me look at this kind of as a beginning and an end. Now, Python will happily run this without that because what it's actually looking for, one of the things is, am I back here at this indent level where my defined function began? So just something to be aware of there when you're doing that. So in this case, this function, I just want to make sure I've saved this. So sample, perfect, yes. All right. So it goes in and goes, oh well, yeah, it ran. There was nothing there really to run, but it ran. So if I would instead have put a print statement in there so you could see it do something. So now it's going to, huh, but notice it didn't do it, right? Why would it not work? I told it to print help. Did we ever call this function? Oh, dang it. So we have to make sure that we call these functions on these problems where we do it. So there it prints help because it actually ran through and did that. So one of the problems we have when we're testing our code, we build all these functions, and if we don't call them, that function could have a serious syntax or logical error. But until we practice it and try to make sure that we know how to run it, we might get a little bit of an issue. So in this case, functions returned. So we want to figure out how we can return functions and get them back out of here. So this, for example, so here we have a function. So define make schedule and block 1 and block 2. So we're taking in two pieces of code. So let's take a look at this one. Make schedule. We'll just type that one. So block 1, block 2. All right. So we've got our function. Now we're at our indent area. So I can probably move that over just a little bit. See if we can get a little more screen area. All right. So our schedule then is equal to, so what they're doing is they're doing first plus block title. So here's one of the things I'm going to show you that goes wrong. So I'm like, well, I'll just copy that. Why? That's kind of ugly to type. Why don't I just copying out of here isn't going to work very well easily for me anyway. All right, so I copy a piece of it. I'm like, oh, okay, so I see what I got going on here. But when I copy out of anything, and you'll see that this happens, it doesn't copy the quote marks correctly. I have to go back in and put them in correctly. So here we're doing first plus block title. So we're using that format title. And so we have to go back and change all those, because notice that when they use the very stylized ones in our print. Well, over here we have to create ones that Python code will actually recognize. So as a hint, when I see that, that tells me that, oh, you copied and pasted from somewhere. And so every once in a while, I'll have some student who says, oh, I'm not going to do my own work, and I can actually figure that out pretty quickly on some of these things. All right, so we have a schedule. We return that schedule. So student schedule, this is what actually calls that function right here. So we say make schedule, and we pass in mathematics and history, and it comes up here and plops in mathematics and history, and then it creates a new variable based on those pieces, concatenates, in other words, it adds them all together, and then passes that one variable back. So it's kind of cool. You're taking in two variables, and what you're passing back is one variable. So we're returning one that we've created out of the other two. So that's where it gets kind of interesting to do that. So we're going to write the code for a schedule program. Begin with the sample code above, but include all 4 of your classes for this semester. Ooh. All right. So you're using the video, which we don't have, so we're going to have to figure out how we can do some formatting techniques to put the schedule on one line and each block and course on a separate line below the string schedule. Blah. Okay. So I'm probably going to do something a little different here. So I know that I'm going to take block 3, block 4. So let's just assume that that's all you have. I know some of you have more than 4 classes. Now, we're going to create this list here, very similar to what we have here. So it's going to get a little ugly in terms of looking at it. So I'm going to try to make it as short here as we possibly can. I'm going to eliminate, what did it want for formatting? Put the word schedule on one line and each course on a separate line below the string schedule. All right. Okay, so I'm going to take away this title piece just to make this short enough to see. So we know how to use that dotted notation. I'm just going to combine these different sections so that we can see all of these pieces. All right. So we're going to put first, second. So adding block 3 or 2. All right. Now that I have this kind of down, here's what I'm going to do in Cheat. I'm going to copy and paste. So I want to be able to create this, but I don't want to have to start over from scratch every single time. Hang on, I got to change something there. Okay, sorry, I had that out of sequence. So I think it's quicker to do this and then I'll edit it as we go through there. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's actually block 2. This one's going to be third, right? And that one becomes block 3. And then this last one is going to be fourth. And then we're going to grab block 4. So we're going to add all these pieces together to create a... hang on a second. Block 4. Okay. So what we've done here is... So we're taking all of those pieces and putting them together, and then we're going to return them. So when we do this, this schedule should have first plus the class plus... All right. Now, one of the things I notice already that we're going to have an issue with is we need an extra space here. So, because remember when we concatenate, it doesn't create a space. So I'm going to go in and put those in real quick. And then I'm going to look at my input. So I'm going to move this over so we can see what we're looking at here again. Okay, so it says return schedule, blah. Student schedule. So we can use the very similar thing. Student schedule is equal to, and then here's where we're going to make that schedule up there above, and we're going to pass in those values for those classes that we're taking. So first class might be CMIS 101. And then history, English 101, math 120. All right, so what we're doing is we're looking at this and we're saying, all right, so we're going to do the very same thing here, but now instead of one item or two items to pass in, we're going to print in a whole slew of them. So next piece then, we need to figure out how many typos your instructor has made, which I guarantee will be several of them. So let's take a look, and we'll just do this. We'll just print student schedule so we can see what it looks like raw. So let's go up and run and save this module. And so we should see some invalid syntax, and I guarantee I have a ton of it because I was trying to type and talk, and that doesn't work very well at all. All right, so let's see why it's saying something about this particular piece right away. All right, plus block. Oh, because I don't have a plus in there. Got it. All right, so now we can run it again and see where my next error is. Oh, line 7, student schedule, users, app, programs, line 4. So clearly I've done something wrong. Oh, I can't spell block apparently, which probably shows back up here again then also because I copied and pasted it. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it did actually now put all of those into one particular item. So now they're all spread out into this one thing. And I see I forgot to put a space here between fourth and math 120. So let's fix that one first. Put our extra space there. All right. So what it's wanting us to do is make this look neat and nice and tidy. So I want to make this nice and neat, and it says, all right, let's do this. It wants to put the word schedule on one line and each block and each course on separate lines below the string schedule. All right, so it gives us a hint on what we might want to do. So we can embed something really weird in print statements. So this piece here, /n, can do something kind of interesting. So what we can do is actually put in here, inside of these, our print statements, we can actually embed special characters. So if we do this, I put a /n or \n. Let's see what happens. I'm just going to run it exactly as is without changing anything else. And oh, look what it did. It moved that down a line. So that \n stands for new line. It doesn't print it. It's one of those embedded weird characters. And this may be one of the weirder things in Python then you're going to see is that. So if I can do that with the first one, maybe I do it then on the next one. So in, and then I do it on the next one on the fourth one. All right, now when I run it, oh, does that look a little neater? So first, second, third, fourth, so there's our schedule. Now, we still haven't put the word schedule on one line and each block and course on separate lines below that, but we can change that. And we can make this as formatted or as unformatted as you want. But there's another one that I use quite a bit. So if I wanted to put in, so if I wanted this to say, so what we did is ran this entire thing. I could actually do this, and I could put another piece in here. So schedule, and then put my new line in, and add it to that string. So I'm adding another piece to it. Oh, okay, quit yelling at me. Hopefully if I don't take that out. All right. So now it's going to write schedule. So you could even take it another step further than that. So if you wanted it to do this, so in that same print statement, rather than a new line at that point, you could put in a T. Let's see what happens when I do that. So that T is actually the tab. So if I haven't typed anything weird, I could say student, so schedule class. Well, if I wanted to then, I could tab out each one of those so that they're directly underneath it. So where we have first plus block 1, at the end of that, I could also do a and so notice now it's going to move it over. Now, because of the length of schedule, I'd actually need to use 2 tabs, but you could certainly do that. So you could say, all right, well, that didn't work with 1 tab, so let me put 2 tabs in there. So you can experiment around and try different things. And look at that. Now we have first, we have class, so I would just need to do the same with here. And the reason that happens here, why we needed the 2 tabs, is schedule is long enough that there's actually a tab hidden in here underneath schedule. So, but to get it at the same length. And so you could do that, and then you could put in the schedule. Well, then, if you wanted to, you could even do different things with this. You could then say, well, you know what? I know I'm going to pass in those 4 blocks, right? So how do I get those blocks? And maybe there's a better way that I can do those. So here we just have pass 1, 2, 3, 4, and student schedule equals. What if you asked the student what their class was? And you could certainly do that. So you could, instead of passing these directly by this way, you could do this. And you could set up an input for those students and say, all right, so class 1 equals input and you could do that then for all 4 classes, and it would go through and ask you, and you could put them in. So, and then it would print out your schedule for you. So that's kind of the things we're looking at here. The next one, the challenge one, I'm going to give you a couple hints, but I am not going to do the entire problem. You're going to have to work on that a little bit. Define a function personal info for 5 parameters. My name, age, number siblings, fave vacation, fave activity. Assign the variable info to format this information in an easy to read format, so very similar to what we just showed you. Call personal info with the argument's value that best fits you. Assign the variable myInfo the function personal info, and print the information returned. Okay. So it's really going to take a program very similar to what we just created. So you're going to take something, but instead of your schedule, you're going to do my personal info. The one thing I'm going to warn you, or one thing I will warn you, is what am I going to do with things like age? So when you take in that age, do we need to manipulate it in any way? So if you're going to not only just display this information, but you're also going to manipulate it and say, and in 5 years you'll be 15 or whatever, then you need to make sure you cast that into the appropriate integer value. So what I would recommend is creating the function first. And in this case, because you have 5 different pieces, so I would name them in my mainline code where you're formatting them, and then pass them into the variable if it were. So in other words, so you could ask for input, but what I might do down in my mainline code then is simply do my name and assign them variables to start with. So that way you've got them in there. Now, notice when I did this, when I assigned a value this way, that becomes an integer. If I'm asking for user input, it's a string. So just kind of remember that. Fave vacation. Let's go. And fave activity. So now I have these 5 different variables, and I can send them all into a function Remember, those names don't have to be the same. Inside of that function, those could simply be, X, Y, Z if you wanted to make it easy. But I would probably name them something useful, but they don't have to be the same. And in fact, it's kind of confusing when you do name them the same. All right. So if you have any problems on this, send me an email, and I will get back to you as quick as I possibly can. All right. Thank you guys for your attention, and have a great time. Go Chiefs.